নমস্কার we are always in English বাংলায় বলতে পারলে আরো ভালো হতো but we have to be in English and especially when someone comes from IIT Kharagpur I think this is a session which I was discussing with a friend of mine Dr. Partho Saruthi Bera. It's a line from Tagore like Dinesh sheshe ghumer deshe and it is even more appropriate when you don't have a tea break and it's declared as the last session. The last academic session. It's like the last procession, which leaves the room with all the aspirations. And I've been given a very difficult topic, and may the lights be off. The lights, all the lights here. Yeah. So the logical and analytical aspects of Indian culture is a topic which has been awarded to me, and the Institute of Culture, Sri Ramakrishna Gold Park, Institute of Culture here at Gold Park has always been my home. So coming here is my homecoming. Respected Maharajas here are like my fathers, more than my father. They care, they love, and they touch my heart. I think that is more important than giving a presentation in this place. Because it is love which carries a perceptor, a visualizer, or a person who is going to experience Indian culture, because everywhere else in the world, reason, logic, analysis has been the only thing which took forward art, culture, philosophy, metaphysics, spirituality, whatever you may call it. But in India, the whole thing has been backed by something which is so special. I'll begin with a story, and a story which is a story, and how do you change this? It's not working. Can I have someone here? This is not working. কোনটা কাজ করে? তো ইয়ে change the slide. So this is really a last session. Yeah. Can you bear with me for a minute, if you don't mind? Yeah. দুটো কেন এখানে? দুটো খুলে আছে, একটা অফ। Yeah, there it is. Yeah, there was a duality. Two presentations of the same identity was open at the same time. In the Rig Veda, you call it Rupang, Rupang, Pratirupang. And every beauty, every form has another beauty and another form, and they reflect each other, which is the Pratirupam. It comes right from the time of the Rigvedic sages like Vashishta, Agastya, Vrigu, Bharadwaj. Sri Ramakrishna used to talk about these sages. Sri Ramchandra, when he used to walk through the forest, not many people could recognize what he is actually, but it was only Bharadwaj and other 11 rishis, the 12 of them, who could recognize what Sri Ramakrishna is. So today we have assembled in the name of a great person, যাকে শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণ বলতেন নরেনের পরেই তোর বুদ্ধি, যার সম্বন্ধে শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণ used to say, just after Noren's intelligence, it is indeed yours. And this intelligence is not the Western form of intelligence. This is an intelligence which is Nishchaytika Buddhi. That means it has a definite foundation, a definite basis of things, and a definite light and certitude and clarity which comes from the light of the soul. অন্তর আত্মার থেকে যে আলো উদ্গীত হয়, the light which comes from inside, that drives the intelligence. Intelligence not alone, but intelligence which is driven by the light. So when Swamiji left the United States, it was Swami Abhedananda who took the gauntlet and almost continued for a long time. Here you see a picture of Swamiji at Ridgely Manor, where he is joined by Turiyanandaji, Abhedanandaji, and many others. So this is a very interesting picture. And I'll take you to the next one, which gives a slightly larger story. When Swamiji is actually living the United States of America, or you can say the North of America, Abhedanandaji picks up the gauntlet for about 25 years, and he continues the huge mandate of spreading the voice, the spirit, the depths of Vedanta and its derivative, which is Indian culture, to the whole West. And it is so interesting that the month and the year he leaves, another young man enters the United States. That's Paramahansa Yogananda. So it was continuous. And there is a relationship between Swamiji and Paramahansa Yogananda, which is mentioned by a story of the silver cup. If anyone in this room has read a book called Autobiography of a Yogi, there was actually a young boy who met Swamiji in his 20th year of age, 1893, in the City Beautiful movement, which Orunda was talking so beautifully. And he was taken into that art institute accompanied by his mother. And after that electrifying ovation for about 1 minute 45 seconds, and that electrifying talk about for a few minutes, there was a vertigo, like a vortex around that man. And this young boy, Mr. Dickinson, could finally, reach Swamiji and said, "Swamiji, I like to have you my guru." And Swamiji said, "I am not your guru. A few decades later, someone will come after me who will greet you with a silver cup." And almost 35, 40 years later, almost 40 years later, in a room in Detroit, when Mr. Dickinson was greeted by Paramahansa Yoganandaji by a silver cup, Dickinson sort of broke into tears and told that story. So this is Rupam, Rupam, Pratirupam. That means the Pratirupam of Yoganandaji giving a silver cup to Mr. Dickinson was a Rupam in the spiritual delight of Swamiji. This is the foundation of Indian culture. A foundation which is embedded on the depths of realization, nothing else. It comes straight from within and then without. It is a journey from inside to outside, not a journey from outside to inside. The entire tree of Indian spirituality, religion, culture, aesthetics, art, architecture, engineering, social sciences, down to the material level, which can be this podium, is an inverted tree, Urdhva Moolam Adha Shwakam. So right at the summit is Shivogyan, and the cascades which are coming down is Jive Sheva. Whether you are doing it culturally, aesthetically, educationally, or any other means. I was listening to that wonderful talk by Dr. Kapila in the morning, and she was a derivative of a spiritual truth which comes from Prabhu Maharaj. And what she is doing is a cascade that comes from within to without. So that is the whole story. So the story of Indian civilization, the foundations of Indian culture, is a story from within to without, which is normally known as involution, asambhuti. Normally, in education, the kind of education we are trained to under the paradigms of the West is evolutionary. We go from class 1 to class 2 to class 3, and we learn higher and higher things. We are used to break things into part. Eta chair, ota table, eta hoche furniture, eta Gold Park Institute, ota Gorihat Market. This is Calcutta, that is Ahmedabad. This is not that good, that is very good. We are used to having reductionist views about our education. We are never able to see an interconnectedness. She was talking about an interconnectedness in this morning. So the foundations of Indian culture is actually the foundations of interconnectedness. So whether it was Swamiji, whether it was Abhedanandaji, whether it was Paramahansa Yoganandaji, or whether it will be a monk or a sage 1,000 years in the past or 1,000 years in the future, it is the same story of the foundations of Indian culture. This is something which we cannot forget. That is the foundation, the bedrock, what Sri Aurobindo says, the bedrock of Indian civilization. And there are people who have written books on this, like A.L. Basham, The Wonder That Was India, and Richard Lonoy, The Speaking Tree, and many more. So what are the true foundations, the logical and analytical side of Indian culture? The scales of the built and the unbuilt. And Dr. U.R. Nagaswami in the morning was talking about the Nada Brahman. And here you see the Nada Brahman. You see the rhythms and the fantasies of a form and a movement, which is contracting and moving out. In the entire presentation, I have about 20 slides. You'll just see this one thing in the entire presentation. In science, you'll probably call it contraction and expansion of waves. In civil engineering, we'll call it compression or extension of waves. In culture, you'll call it the use of black hues as against the white hues, the color fundamentals. In philosophy, you'll call something which is ontologically the being, where things are being decentralized, as against becoming, which is decentralized. So this whole concept of the being and the becoming, the whole concept of the scales of the built and the unbuilt, the whole concept of the connections between how much we can see rupang, and how much we cannot see pratirupam, and the relationship between the two is the very foundation of the Indian culture. Because if I freeze this picture, আমি যদি এটাকে freeze করি at any point of time t, I'll probably see a cylinder. But when I see it over time, আমি যখন এটা সময়ের উপরে দেখছি, when I'm seeing it over time, when I'm not seeing it statically. So statics and dynamics are the foundations of Indian culture. When Nandalal Bose conceived Swamiji's Kalidi Mother, which was so wonderfully described in the preceding session, Nandalal Babu was trying to see the built and the unbuilt behind the poetry composed by Swamiji. Kali as the destroyer, Kali as the mother, and Kali as everything between the mother and the destroyer, and Kali as something else which is even more than these three. So that is the whole combination of the built and the unbuilt. So this was a phenomenal foundation which was forwarded to Swamiji, and this resonates with Dr. Kapilad's presentation in the morning. And it was way back in 1890 in the Kumayun, in a place where the two rivers came together, Kaushiki and another small river from the Himalayas. And Swamiji was moving with one of his brother, Akhundanandaji, and then suddenly he felt very meditative. And this is exactly what happened to him for about 2 hours. Akhundanandaji, or Ganges as he was known, he just got back from the meditation for about after 20-25 minutes. And Swamiji came back from the dhyana stage after about 2 hours. And then he said, today was a great, auspicious, benign day. Do you have a notebook? And Gangadhar Maharaj in those days just took out some pages, a little pen, perhaps a pencil. And Swamiji has noted these lines. And this is what Swamiji wrote. And the first line is not from Hinduism, it's from Christianity, from the revelations of St. John. In the beginning is the Word is with God, and the Word is God. সৃষ্টির আদিতে শব্দ ছিল, শব্দ ঈশ্বরের সাথে ছিল, শব্দই ঈশ্বর। সৃষ্টির আদিতে শব্দ ছিল, there was no one to conceive it, শব্দ ঈশ্বরের সাথে ছিল, শব্দকে শুনবার জন্য কেউ ছিল, শব্দই ঈশ্বর, ঈশ্বর আর শব্দ একাকার হয়ে গেলেন। সেই জন্য the microcosm, the person who is experiencing, I or any one of you, and what is experienced outside a Bohir Brahmando, are built on the same plan. There's only one parikalpana, one yojana, one pattern which is driving the entire evolution and the involution of the universe. What do we mean? The guru is involved in the disciple, and the disciple evolves up to the guru. So that is involution and evolution. Sri Ramakrishna যখন বারান্দায় গিয়ে অবদানন্দজির পিঠে স্পর্শ করে কুলকুণ্ডলিনী শক্তিকে জাগিয়ে দিচ্ছেন, when Sri Ramakrishna is touching the back of Abhedanandaji and raising the inner power, Sri Ramakrishna is getting involved in Abhedanandaji. And Abhedanandaji starts a journey to evolve to a level which Sri Ramakrishna expects from him. And that's the foundation of Indian culture. So all that Abhedanandaji does in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years starts from that veranda, from that touch, where somebody gets involved, a sambhuti, and somebody gets evolved, sambhuti. And this is what Swamiji writes, and I'm not going to read each and every of this, but what is so important is right here, Swamiji bolchen that this dual aspect of the form and the formless, something that we see and which we don't see, the connection between the rupam and the pratirupam. The rupam, it's like a reflection, it's like a resonance, it's like an echo. So after seeing it again and again and again and again, something emerges which is pratirupam. And that is what Professor was saying in the morning, the whole vibration of the Nada Brahman. That means there is a contraction and expansion of the experiential sound and the visuals of the universe. Orthad Nad ebong Jyoti, ja amra shuni ebong ja amra dekhi. It is an audio-visual experience at the divine level. And this is a pure science. There is no hocus pocus in this. And when you pick up a brush and express that, it becomes art. When you pick up a pen and you write that, it becomes literature. And when you stage that on a podium like this, it becomes dance. And when you make a mathematical equation, it becomes science, Bigyan. এগুলোর মধ্যে কোনো বিরোধ নেই. That is the foundation of Indian culture. Swamiji বলছেন, the macrocosm and the microcosm are built on the same plan. This is the foundation of Indian culture. And this foundation can be drawn and described in this form, which is a tree where the roots are below and the branches are above. অর্থাৎ মূলটা নিচে আর শাখাগুলো ওপর দিকে. একটু জল খেয়ে নিই. And a tree where the roots are above and the branches are below. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Imagine Buddha going and walking and sitting under the Ashwatha tree. The Ashwatha tree has the roots below and the branches above. Buddhadev যখন গিয়ে ওটার নিচে বসছেন, when the Buddha goes and sits under the tree, his roots are above in the brain and the entire nerve branches are below. So the urdhvamulam adhashwakam, the microcosm, is sitting under the tree, which is adhamulam nimnamulam udhashakam, which is the tree itself. So it is a combination of the rupam pratirupam. It was described in the Vedas, it was repeated in the Katha Upanishad, it became the foundation of the Purushottam Yoga of the Gita. Buddha used it as the Bodhi tree, and today Richard Lanoy has made a column which is a speaking tree, which is so important in the times of India. I mean, everyone writes a documentary on culture under this. So this is the continuity of Indian culture. When Dr. L. Bashram describes Indian culture, he says, this is the country which is not like Egypt or Greece, যেটা ছিল এখন আর পাওয়া যায় না. সেই যে গায়ত্রী মন্ত্র 1000 বছর আগে কে না কে বলে গেছিল, আজও একটা লোক তার PhD ডিগ্রি নাও থাকতে পারে. I mean, Dr. Kapila was saying this in the morning. But she has an access to the Gayatri Mantra. This is a sustainable habitat civilization. সেখানে governance টাকা দিচ্ছে না দিচ্ছে, that is not so important. So the continuity of Indian culture is its sustenance. So it is a connection between what is abstract and what is iconic. And Swamiji has mentioned and penned all these wonderful lines in the future of India, Bharatbharsher Bhavishot. Swamiji says that out of this decay, one day, the Urdhvamula, there will be a re-sprouting. নতুন ভারতবর্ষ আবার করে জেগে উঠবে. যারা পড়েননি একবার পড়ে দেখবেন. Swamiji has talked about this. And Swamiji again says this in his macrocosm, that every evolution, যেই শিষ্য গুরু হবে ভবিষ্যতে, is preceded by an involution. The seed is the father of the future tree, and another tree was itself the father of the seed. আজকের যে বীজ সেটা ভবিষ্যতের গাছের জন্ম, ভবিষ্যতের যে গাছ সেটা পরবর্তীকালের বীজের পিতা বা জনজায়ত্রী. So this whole combination of the tree, which is the shape of a temple, which is the Nada Brahman, which is the shape of a tree that you see in elevation, is also the footprint that you see in a plan. which is the concentric circles from outside, the Pancha Kosha, from the Annamaya Kosha, moving on to the most subtle koshas of the Bigyanmaya Kosha, and finally penetrating inside from Rupam to Pratirupam, and from Pratirupam to Sarva Sarupam, and then from Sarva Sarupam to Sarvatitam, finally into the Vindu, which was so well described by the Vyaktya, then Vyaktya, Abhyaktya, and then Abhyaktya, Vyakta, and then only Abhyaktya, and then Abhyakta becomes so much that it is transcendental. হাড়িটা যখন ভেঙে যাচ্ছে, গিরিশ ঘোষকে ঠাকুর বলছেন যে শেষের হাড়িটা ভেঙে গেল, মনে কর 10টা ঘট আছে, there are 10 pitchers, and you destroy the 9 ones. What is that? Girish Ghosh says there's one reflection and there's one sun. And Sri Ramakrishna says when the last one is broken, Girish Ghosh says there is only one sun. Sri Ramakrishna says no, there's no one to say that. There's no one. Just look at the brilliance of Sri Ramakrishna. I mean, he's an artist. He's composing his lines. He's painting while speaking. Ami chobi likhi. অবনীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুরের কথা, আমি ছবি লিখি, মানে উনি যখন কথা বলছেন, he's painting his talks. That's the beauty of Sri Ramakrishna. So this is Rupam, Rupam, Pratirupam. I hope I am making it clear to all of you. Yeah, without the T. Yeah. So this is the whole scales. These are the whole scales of Indian culture. So right from the top, from the vast, unfathomable, unapproachable, inaccessible, unaffordable spiritual depths, to the simple depths which is in between, which is all culture and education, to the lowest level where people are not getting roti, kapra and makan. Khali pete dharma hoy na, Swamiji bolchen. So India from those summits came down to this lowest height. So it was the divine duty of Swamiji to take the foundations of Indian culture to the West and retrace Ardhamulam Udashakam to Urdhamulam Adhashwakam. So the whole foundation of Indian journey, the whole journey of Swamiji, Abhedanandaji and all others is a very foundation of Indian culture itself. And it can be proved, written by using what you call iconography. So you come from outside to inside to actually understand that the journey is from inside to outside. So Swamiji actually explained a diagram which is there in Sister Nivedita's book, The Unity in Diversity. It was actually a part of a letter, and Swamiji said, take an orange, and if everything is a sector, and so the sectors are different, but they have a common axis. So the diagram which Swamiji drew in the form of an orange can be decomposed to a plan which is this, and can be composed to a tree form which is a temple form. So this is the Jyotir Brahman, and this is also the Nada Brahman, and this is the Akhanda Nada Jyoti Brahman. That means the visual and the audio experiences are going side by side simultaneously. And this is nothing else but the relationship between Avyakta and Vyakta, which was so well mentioned by Professor in the morning, Professor Nagamurthy. And at the middle of it, between what is not expressed, formless, and what is expressed, that is form, is Shakti. I mean, she. As long as he is there, she is also there. Tora jake Brahma bolish, আমি তাকেই শক্তি বলি, মা বলি, মা নাম বড় মধুর গো. What you say as Brahman, to me it's Shakti, the mother. If you say Brahman, you can go up to the living room, but if I say Shakti and the mother, I can go right up to the bedroom. It's so intimate. That is the whole foundation of Indian culture as per the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So Sri Ramakrishna himself, his gospel is the foundation of Indian culture. You pick up one line and you get the whole story. So this idea, there's a lot of thing in this slide. I won't get into the complicated thing. So high above is the spiritual. Everything is light. Akhundo, stimito jyotir sindhu, akhundo ghore, chache dhala kanti jano. I mean, Sharat Maharajer গান আছে. Stimito ekdom akhundo jyotir sindhu. That is spirit. And here we are, roti kapra makan. People are not able to afford, people are not able to live. That's the material. So the journey in between is from the education to the culture to the aesthetics. And this was actually portrayed by a great thinker who transferred and transformed the foundations and the logics and the analytics of Indian culture to a famous book which is called The Hierarchy of Needs. His name was Abraham Maslow. And today Abraham Maslow's books have penetrated everywhere: planning, management, economics, urban sciences, regional sciences. Shop jagay you get Abraham Maslow. And Abraham Maslow actually got that from a person called Dr. Haridas Chaudhuri, who took the ideas of Sri Aurobindo to the West. And you know the connections between Swamiji and Sri Aurobindo. I need not tell this to an august audience. So the two sages, Sri Aurobindo and Swamiji, forwarded a complete journey of the foundations of Indian culture to the West. So there are books which prove that by Joseph Vrinte, the connection between Maslow and Sri Aurobindo and Sri Aurobindo and Ken Wilber. Very pramanik duto boi. And I'll just go back. And this whole movement finally became so powerful that he was joined by two other men. One was Alan Watts and another was Arnold Toynbee. In America, the big three A's, A, Watts, Arnold and Abraham, they came together and they have, আমাদের Indian culture কি হারিয়ে গেছে? না. It is all there in the whole world. And they are using and reproducing our Indian culture in their language and in their words. So India is living. Swamiji তাই বলছেন, what is Buddha to the east, I am to the west. অনেক দিন আগে এশিয়াতে যা হয়েছিল আমি পশ্চিমের জন্য ওইদিকে যাত্রা করলাম, তুরিয়ানন্দজিকে বলছেন. So then what are I'm almost ending. So what are the discrete parameters of the logical and analytical sides of Indian culture? So many institutes were set up. In the second visit to the West, which looks a little pacific, lesser, Swamiji actually did a great task. He had spent a lot of time in Sacramento, Pasadena, Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco. And he planted a seed what will eventually become 12, 20, 25 of these institutes. One of them is California Institute of Integral Studies, where everything is studied. So what you see in the previous slide in the form of a triangle is nothing else but the ancient Sri Chakra, which is a penetration of the ascendant and the descendant. So this is Rupang, Rupang, Pratirupang, which gets affected. So whether you see it in a small part, Angsho, whether you see it in a sector, Kala, or you see it in the whole circle, which is Purna. So avatars are also Angsho avatar, Kala avatar, Purna avatar. It's there in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So everything is the foundation. You can express all the paintings which was shown by Professor Durga Basu and that wonderful presentation just before lunch. It was too long, but it was so rich. I mean, all the details of the great Rashtrakutas and the Guptas and the Satavahanas, they were all shown. So it is what is Dhyana Gamyam in the meditation is becoming Akhanda Ikkhan Gamyam. That means you're seeing what you have meditated. So the sculptors were also meditators. So that is the gospel which Gurudev Ravindranath wanted to create in the Kala Bhavan. And then he had an exchange with Madan Mohan Malviya ji at BHU. And the two Kala Bhavans were established in 1930s and the 1940s. So that's the whole story. So the cardinals of the spatio-temporal, so is the Megdutam. So this is the Vastu Purusha Mandala. So the Meg, which starts from Ramtek and goes to Kashmir. I mean, the name of Naga is not there in the south, but also in Kashmir. Anantanag, Bheri Nag. I mean, there are hundreds of places in Kashmir which ends with Nag. In one place it's a prefix, in one place it's a suffix. So that's the beauty of it. I mean, it was a wonderful presentation by you, sir. So before the Uttar Megh actually goes to Kashmir, the Purva Megh has actually come from Kashmir. So Uttar and Purva are just not north and east, but they also mean later and before. This is Sanskrit, the perfected language. That means most of the words in Sanskrit have a spatial meaning and also has a temporal meaning. Einstein. The whole of Sanskrit is Einstein, Schrödinger, and Heisenberg. It's spatio-temporal. And this is what is the Vastu Purusha Mandala. And these are the scales. So if you are at 10 to the power 0, we are at this scale. And if you're at the 10 to the power minus 12, it is microcosm. And if you're at the 10 to the power plus 14, it is macrocosm. But they're all built on the same plan. And the plan is Purva Megha or Uttar Megha in Meghdhutam, or Purva Archik or Uttar Archik in Samaveda. So that is the whole foundation of the cardinals of the spatial, temporal, and that is what controls the art and architectural dynamics of India. That is the foundation. It is on this foundation Kalidas composed his Avigyan Sakuntalam, Malavika, Agnimitram, and the Meghdhutam. They talk about 2-3 Kalidasas in history. That's not so important. That's a fight on unnecessary things. If there are 3 Kalidasas, they walked on the same area. So what is it? Come on. Problem kya hai? There's no problem at all. So that's the whole thing. So we go on to the framework of art. And a lady came from the West, and she was a friend of Pandit Uday Shankar, and she had spent huge time with Dr. Ananda Kumar Swami and Havel and others, became a guardian of Nandalal Babu and many, walked in BHU, and her name was Alice Bonner, if some of you have heard in this room. And she has a great work at Kala Bhavan, Bharat Kala Bhavan in BHU. And she really brought about the framework. I mean, Ruper pichone pratiroop ache. Behind the roof or the roop, you have the pratiroof. And behind the pratiroop, you have the framework, the iconographic frameworks. So Alice Bonner went to that level, and she started discussing with Pandit Uday Shankar, the brother of Ravi Shankar. And Uday Shankar said, what I am doing in the dance form, you are doing with your brush. So they are the 2 performing arts. One is a fine art, one is a performing art. But the foundations are that they come from the last line. They come from endless, innumerable generations and uncounted centuries of meditative experiences by our rishis. Ekasad vipra bahuda vadanti. That one truth has been manifested in many forms, many rupam. So between the formless to the form, the intermediate is pratirupam. So rupam, if you backtrack, is rupam to pratirupam to rupatit. If you front track, is rupatit to pratirupam. So what Sri Ramakrishna says, sthula shukha karan mahakaran. I mean, he gives a beautiful example. Tora jebhabe onkar ke define korish, the way you define onkar, that's not my way. I can see a bell whose sound comes and hits the ocean, and I can see the waves rising, it's just going above. And Sri Ramakrishna gives a complete definition, the foundations of Onkar in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Thanks to Master Mashai, otherwise we wouldn't have got that. It's the latest gospel in the history of spirituality. And that is the foundation of our art. And that is also the evolution of our culture. And that became a hot topic in the West when Norbert Wiener converted that thought into what is called cybernetics. We can discuss on one whole day on this. When I'm talking with logic, small things, I'm at the physical Cartesian level, Descartesian, it's Cartesian level. But when I'm doing things again and again, I'm going to Varanasi, I'm going to Dashashwamedh Ghat to take a bath. The next day I'm again going to have a bath. The next day again I'm going to the bath. One day I have not gone to the Ganges, to the Ganga to take a bath. But in my dream I see that I'm going to the Ganga. So that means the whole impression has entered my mental level. Manomaya and Pranomaya Kosha. So that's at the mental, habitual level. If I'm able to penetrate that, then I enter the Bigyanmaya, Anandamaya Kosha, which is the cognitive and the meditative level. And then if I'm lucky, if you are lucky, if you're all lucky, then one day the sadhaka will become the aspirant of truth. And he'll reach. So this is cybernetics, the evolution of Indian culture. So Indian culture is actually not this way, it's the other way. It comes from the highest point to cognitive, to the mental, to the physical. And it's like the waveform. So this is the Indus Valley seal, the double unicorn, which perhaps had symbolized the balance between the left and the right, the balance between compression and tension, the balance between right-wing thinking and left-wing thinking. In neurology, what you call neuroplasticity, the balance. I mean, there are Nobel Prizes which are given, and Ilya Prigogine got his Nobel Prize in 1966 based on his theories of complexity and dissipative structures. The last slide talks about that, and I'm coming to the end. So the cosmic scales of Indian philosophy has given birth to music. It has given birth to folklores like Megdutam, and it has given birth to language. So language is just not writing, it's also visualizing. Pictorial cursory language. So most of Indian language, like the Brahmi and the Indus Valley script, are all non-cursive pictorial languages, like Chinese and Japanese language. It's an Asiatic language which lies on the Orient, not on the West. So these are things which has to be discovered, and that also controls the scale of the form that we have in the north of India, where as you enter the building, the initial parts are very wide and the final parts are very small. But the initial parts are very low and the final parts are very tall. But in the south, the initial parts are just the opposite and the final parts are just the opposite. So Dr. Adam Hardy of Cambridge, he has come with a wonderful theory of what is called Agni and Soma, explanation of the Aryan and the Dravidian architecture. The word Dravida means condensation, and Sri Aurobindo says the word Aryan means fire. So the North Indian temple architecture and the South Indian temple architecture is nothing else but the combination of fire and water, Agni and Soma. So it's the science of architecture which controls the whole foundation. So this whole idea of Aryans coming from outside and the Dravidians originally there in India is a wrong story coined by the Westerners. The two architectures remained in India right from day one, because it's a part of the Vedas. So we need to rewrite our stories, we need to rewrite our narratives, and we have an initiative in IIT Kharagpur which is called Sandhi. Maharaj gave us a permission last year to speak here for about 3 days. So many of you in this room know what we are doing. So, but I don't want to make a propaganda today, because that's not the intention today. This is impersonal. This is for the universal. So this is Nandan Tattva, the ecology of culture. And the people who actually worked for this was Nandalal Babu, Aban Thakur, Sir Patrick Geddes, and Gurudev Tagore himself. And there are many other names. And this is how it actually expanded. And this is a very complex slide. And this is how the whole thing has expanded in the West. I'll just pick up one name, which is, so this is Ilya Prigogine and Manfred Vigen, who got a Nobel Prize by applying Indian philosophy and Indian context in modern science. And if you read the books of Ilya Prigogine, you'll see the dance of Shiva and the infinite expanse of Vishnu. A Nobel laureate chemist is working on Vishnu and Shiva to explain the quantum reality in nuclear chemistry. Incredible, because behind the chemical elements, he sees the great things. So I'll end the presentation with one example. So has it been applied for the ordinary people? Do you see that? So here is an example, and then we complete. So what can be a strong contemporary evidence? So a movie in 2009 was made by a man called James Cameron, and the name of the movie is Avatar, and the director is James Cameron, and he had spent around 12 years of research working on Indology, Tibetan Buddhism, Kashmir Shaivism with Jack Copperfield and others. And then he found out when the present science society actually visited the planet, they could not understand the level of civilization. Apnara kojon avatar dekhechen? How many in this room? Oh, that's good. At least 20 people. So at least 20 people in a crowd. So please see the movie if you haven't. And this is a certitude of Avatar, maybe subconsciously linked to India. And the current scientific community of the West is unable to understand this, and they think that this is not true. So finally, in the movie, they found out that the planet which is called Pandora, just because you are not able to understand it, is actually scientifically very advanced, not backward. They are not tribal. So in that movie, they show that the form and the color that they see is actually the reflection of a deeper truth. And it reflects the voice of the ancient sages. And the tribes of Pandora are actually built on a deep ecological system of Pandora. So if you understand, if I understand, it is done. If I don't understand, I'll only laugh and wink at the other person and join in a welter of laughter, ridicule. And sometimes ridicule improves you. It was told by one presentation, you become the arrogance goes off. So I'll end with Swamiji. Swamiji says, behind and before this analytical keenness, which is important, covering it in a velvet sheath, was the other great mental peculiarity of the race, the poetic insight. Its religion, its philosophy, its history, its ethics, its politics were all inlaid in a flower bed of poetic imagery. That is the foundation, that is the logical, the complete logical and analytical foundation of Indian culture. It's from Swamiji, the great ensemble called The Historical Evolution of India. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sen, for this delightful talk. Everyone would like to go on listening and listening, but we are lagging behind in time. So now we move on to the next talk. This is by Professor Somiran Chandra Chakraborty, former Director, School of Vedic Studies, Rabindra Bharati University, one of the most eminent Vedicists today, and he would be talking on spirituality in Indian culture and philosophy. Professor Chakraborty.
No.
This is what is all the time. আপনি এত ভালো বলেন, আমি আগেও শুনেছি এখানে, যেটা আপনি বললেন, ইটস এ হোম টু ইউ, সো আই লিসেন টু ইউ।
ওম মূকং করোতি বাচালম পঙ্গুং লঙ্ঘয়তে গিরিম যৎকৃপাতমহং বন্দে পরমানন্দ মাধবম সদাশিবসমারম্ভাং শঙ্করাচার্যমধ্যমাম अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। Revered Secretary Maharaj, all the revered members of the monastic order, Professor Chatterjee, distinguished scholars and friends. At the outset, I shall like to thank the organizers of this program for kindly asking me to participate. A big subject has been given to a small man, because I am neither a spiritualist nor a philosopher, but I am supposed to speak on spirituality in Indian philosophy and culture. However, I would like to dedicate the address as a humble verbal tribute, a Bhakya Pushpopahar, to the sacred memory of Srimad Swami Abhedananda Ji Maharaj, a great master of both spirituality and spiritualism. Spirituality is notoriously hard to define. There is no single, widely agreed definition of spirituality. Surveys of the definition of the term show a broad range of definitions. There is little agreement. In a biblical context, the term means being animated by God, to be driven by the Holy Spirit, as opposed to a life which rejects this influence. In modern times, the emphasis is on subjective experience and the deepest values and meanings by which people live, incorporating personal growth or transformation, usually in a context separate from organized religious institutions. In the 11th century, spirituality began to denote the mental aspect of life as opposed to the material and sensual aspects of life. In the 13th century, spirituality acquired a social and psychological meaning. Socially, it denoted the territory of the clergy. Psychologically, it denoted the realm of the inner life. After the Second World War, spirituality and religion became disconnected, and spirituality became more oriented on subjective experience. The distinction between the spiritual and the religious became more common in the popular mind during the late 20th century with the rise of secularism and the advent of the New Age movement. The term spiritual is now frequently used in contexts in which the term religious was formerly employed. Those who speak of spirituality outside of religion often define themselves as spiritual but not religious. According to one 2005 poll, about 24% of the United States population identifies itself as spiritual but not religious. Not all modern notions of spirituality embrace transcendental ideas. Secular spirituality emphasizes humanistic ideas on moral character, qualities such as love, compassion, patience, tolerance, forgiveness, contentment, responsibility, harmony, and a concern for others. These are aspects of life and human experience which go beyond, indeed, a purely materialistic view of the world, without necessarily accepting belief in a supernatural reality or divine being. But it effectively amounts to saying everything and anything that is good and virtuous is necessarily spiritual. Morality, virtue, and goodness can be derived without appealing to supernatural forces. Daniel Dennett suggests people make a mistake of thinking spirituality has anything to do with either religious doctrines or the supernatural, and he claims that spirituality can be and is often entirely secular. However, the dissenters argue that in that case, spirituality boils down to being nothing more than a synonym for humanism. Confronted by the multitude of such conflict and even contradicting definitions, I turn to etymology. The term spirituality is derived from the word spiritual, which literally means concerning the spirit. The term spirit means animating or vital principle in the living beings. The word spirituality as a noun means the quality of being concerned with the human spirit or soul as opposed to material or physical things. The quality or state of being concerned with religion or religious matters. Its synonyms are otherworldliness, spiritism, internality, inwardness, preoccupation with that concerns human inner nature. And antonyms are worldliness, concern with worldly affairs, to the neglect of spiritual needs. Thus, the differences in meaning and in shades of meaning have been recorded in the dictionaries. Let's now turn to the Indian perception of the subject. It's interesting to note that some modern perceptions, as mentioned above, were actually anticipated in the Indian tradition long ago. The word spirituality may be rendered as adhyatmika in Sanskrit. The quality of being adhyatmika, the Sanskrit word adhyatma is a combination of two words, adhi and atman. Adhyatma within oneself or concerning oneself. What is then atman? The word is mainly used in the Vedas and Upanishads in the following four senses. One, oneself, the own body, distinguished from the outside world. Second, the trunk of the body, madhya deha, distinguished from the limbs. Third, the soul, distinct from body, mind and senses, the essence of our existence. And fourthly, the supreme soul, distinguished from anything else, called by various words as Atman, Purusha or Brahman. The word Adhyatma is often used in the Brahmanas and the Upanishads in the sense of within the body or with reference to oneself. There are different levels of knowledge, phenomenal, psychical and spiritual, respectively relating to phenomenon, deity and oneself. A phenomenal symbol is often identified with its adhidaivato and adhyatmika counterparts. In the Brahmanas and the Upanishads, we find a synthesis of different layers of meanings with reference to the material world, that is adhibhuta, to the divine, adhidaivato, to ritual, adhiyagna, and to oneself, adhyatma. The identifications aim at presenting a unified picture of the universe. These identifications are regarded as equations in terms of a more or less consistent classificatory system and the keynote of the Brahmanic science. Hesterman observed, all things, entities, notions, powers are connected with each other. In the course of this process, the connection converged more and more, and in the end, as shown in the Upanishadic text, the intrinsic coherence of the universe was formulated in the ultimate connection, Tat Tvam Asi. Indian tradition, especially the Upanishad, lays stress on turning inward. Paranchi khani batinath swayambhu. But kashchit dhira pratyagatmanam aiksharabritta chakshur amritattam icchan. And that was the stress. You turn to yourself, turn to within. If the focus is inward, one tends to view true reality as no other than awareness itself. The Aitareya Upanishad tells us that in the beginning, only the self was there. Pranam Maharaj. Pranam Maharaj. The Aitareya Upanishad tells us that in the beginning only the self was there. The Atman produced the worlds, then Purusha, and then the deities, and asked the deities to enter the Purusha according to their places. Agni, having become speech, entered the mouth. The sun, having become sight, entered the eyes, and so on. Then Atman himself entered the Purusha by the passage called Vidriti. The individual is a replica of the universe. Whatever exists in the world also exists in the individual body. Macrocosm in the microcosm. The Vedantic mystics conceive of the heart as a lotus bud of the size of a thumb, within which there is a luminous space where Brahman or the Purusha is manifest. Angushta matra Purusha madhva atmani tishtati, or Angushta matra Purusha jyotiriva dhumakaha. एषमो आत्मा अंतर्हृदय अनियान ब्रीहेर बा यवाद बा सर्षपाद बा ज्यायान पृथिव्या ज्यायान अंतरिक्षात ज्यायान दिवः. He is myself within the heart, smaller than a grain of rice, a grain of barley, a mustard seed, yet greater than the earth, mid-region and heaven. He is that Brahman. जो वैसा बहिर्धा पुरुषाद आकाश अयं भावस जोयम अंत पुरुष आकाश जो वैस अंत पुरुष आकाश अयं भावस जोयम अंतर्हृदय आकाश तदेतत् पूर्णम अप्रवर्ति. The akasha which is outside a person is the same as that which is inside a person. The akasha which is inside a person is the akasha within the heart. The akasha which is within the heart is omnipresent and unchanging. Atha yadidam asmin brahmapure daharam pundarikang beshmo daharasmin akashastasmin yadantas tadanveshtavyam tadbhav vijignasitavyam iti, the Chandogya Upanishad says. There is in this city of Brahman, that is our body, in the city of Brahman, an abode, the small lotus of the heart, within it a small akasha. Now, what exists within that small akasha, that is to be sought after, that is what one should desire to comprehend. The individual self within this human body, adhyatma, is to be seen, atma vare drashtabhya, seen as identical with the universal self. Prajnanam brahma tattvamasi, ayam atma brahma, aham brahmasmi, and that summarizes the whole situation. And since Brahman is everything, sarvam khalidam brahma, the knower of Atman is identified with everything, that is sarvatma bhava, correspondence of microcosm and macrocosm. That is indeed the spiritual goal according to the Upanishads. This realization is spirituality in the strictest sense of the term. And this knowledge is the highest knowledge, adhyatma vidya vidyanam. But this is the highest achievement of man and presupposes numerous stages leading to it. The dictionary meanings included or spirituality is not concerned with material values or pursuits. And antonyms were worldliness, that is concerned with worldly affairs to the neglect of spiritual needs. Now it's a question of degree. To what extent one is or is not concerned with material values or pursuits. There will be numerous stages between sheer materialism, as evinced in life of ordinary people like us, and total spirituality, as evinced in the lives of men like Sriman Mahaprabhu or Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Whatever contributed to the goal of spirituality was also regarded as spiritual. It's an important concept. Sadhya sadhanayor akyam idam ayur ghritam jata. They say ayur ghritam. Ghee is long life. What is the meaning? The ghee is the cause of long life. That is to say, identifying the cause and effect. Similarly here, about spirituality, that explains why various religious practices and austerities are also regarded as spirituality. Roughly and very broadly speaking, it may be said, whatever raises our mind above material drives may be regarded as spiritual. In this sense, humanism, which is nowadays regarded by some as spirituality, indeed comes under spirituality. And Buddhists also preach the same thing, a very good living through the message of Ashtangika Marga. A good moral living is certainly higher than sheer hedonist living and a step towards spirituality. But pure spirituality is still much higher. Full realization is the leap to which all spiritual experiences ultimately lead. There is a notion that India is a spiritual country, otherworldly in outlook, ignoring material aspects of life. It's a fib. India paid attention to all aspects of life, material and spiritual, in a balanced way. The scheme of Trivarga recognizes Artha, Kama and Dharma as threefold objects of human life. Artha means here material prosperity, any type of possession, and Kama means all sorts of pleasure. Artha is an instrumental value, for it helps one achieve enjoyment, which is the intrinsic value, but they have to be sublimated by means of dharma in order to be real values. By means of dharma, one achieves happiness in this world and heaven after death. Heaven lies somewhere between sheer material values and the ultimate value of liberation. Somewhere between material values and spiritual values. For aspirants of the highest value, the Trivarga becomes disvalue. But that's a very high state of existence. For ordinary people, dharma is necessary for preparing one for spirituality, the quest for the highest achievements. And that is why religiosity has also been regarded as spirituality, though in a secondary step. Only the other day before yesterday, our esteemed Secretary Maharaj, while delivering an address, told, it is not sufficient to become Narottama from Naro. You have to be Narayan. If becoming Narayana is spirituality in its ultimate sense, then becoming Narottama becomes spirituality in the intermediate level. Mind is the interfacing instrumentality that is concerned at one end to the external world and to consciousness at the other end. Hence, purification of mind has always been regarded as a very important step towards spirituality. The very desire for spiritual awakening doesn't arise in people like us. Tametang vedanu vachanena brahmana vividishanti yajnena danena tapasa nashakena. Spirituality is not something that happens by itself, usually not. The seeker has to strive and work hard for this consummation. In Vivekananda's view, this struggle towards realization is what is dynamic spirituality, in his expression. Dynamic spirituality, which stands for the steady spiritual growth of man. The word yoga, he clarifies, primarily signifies the process by which an aspirant is united to his highest ideal. For the spiritual development of four main types of personality, the intellectual, the active, the emotional and the psychic or introspective, the respective forms of yoga are Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Raja Yoga. The Veda, including the Upanishad, forms the basis of Indian culture and philosophy. Knowledge of reality is the aim of the philosophical systems. The fourfold aims of human life are Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. Moksha Shastra is represented by the orthodox systems of philosophy. In Indian context, philosophy is not merely for intellectual exercises. Now, the systems of philosophy, there are so many systems, ranging from Charvaka's materialism to monist idealism, other systems lying between them. The Charvaka system admits no spirit, and therefore no question of spirituality arises. The other schools regarded liberation, spiritual liberation, by them as the highest goal of life, viewed somewhat differently by them, and called also differently, sometimes nirvana, kaivalya, or moksha. Knowing the true nature of Atman, Adhyatma Vidya, remains, however, the common notion of spirituality. The relation between the individual soul and the Supreme Soul has been viewed differently, as a part in Vishishtadvaita, as identical or reflection of in the Advaita, and different but similar in Dvaita. The concept of liberation also varies accordingly. Identity according to Advaita, proximity or unity with God in different grades, Tadatmya, Salokya, Sarupya, Sajujya in others. Darshana means seeing, but also insight or spiritual vision. Variety of seeing the reality is at the root of differences among the philosophical systems. Of the six orthodox systems, Sankhya admits two fundamental entities. In Charvaka system, no separate entity as consciousness. Consciousness arises from four elements, somewhat like a chemical compound. That was Charvaka's concept. Chaturbha khalu bhutebhyash chaitanya upajayat. But Sankhya admits two fundamental entities, Purusha and Prakriti, consciousness and matter. All material effects are modifications of Prakriti. Purusha is the principle of pure consciousness, the knower, untainted, eternal, beyond change and activity, and devoid of attributes. Because of the proximity of Prakriti, it appears sagunam. Non-discrimination is the cause of his bondage. By discrimination, when Prakriti is seen by the Purusha, he becomes detached from body and mind, which are modifications of Prakriti, and gains isolation, kaivalya, which is sarupe avasthana, being established in one's own real nature. Sankhya admits no God, personal or impersonal. The followers of this system can very well claim to be spiritual without being religious, as done by some modern people. The yoga system admits God, not as the absolute or the creator, but as Purusha par excellence, as a teacher and guide, whose help may be profitably sought for spiritual realization. By purifying and controlling changes in the mental mechanism, yoga systematically brings about the release of Purusha from Prakriti. Yogic techniques control the body, mind, and sense organs. Thus, this philosophy is also considered a means of achieving freedom or mukti. Even those who do not admit God may follow this line for spiritual end. Yoga admits the existence of God, as I told you right now, not necessarily, but devotion to Him is the surest way of obtaining concentration. Ishvara can remove the obstacles of the yoga. So followers of this system are certainly spiritualists, not necessarily, but optionally seeking the help of God. Nyaya system accepts God enthusiastically as the creator. Karya Yoga, since they always lay stress on logic, so many inferences have been produced in support of the establishing that existence of God. Karya yojana dhityade padat pratyayata shrute bhakya sankhya visheshacha sadho vishwavidabhaya. Bondage is due to ignorance and liberation is due to knowledge. Kanado advocates liberation from tattva jnana, that is knowledge of reality, of the padarthas categories. Liberation is viewed as liberation from misery. When the mind is detached from objects, there is no misery or happiness. One is then freed from the unseen results or actions. Transmigration of self depends on adrishto. When adrishto is no more, there is no new connection with body, there is no rebirth. The treatment of the subject is more detailed in Gautama's Nyaya Sutra. He too holds that tattva jnana, knowledge of the real character of the 16 categories, leads to nishreyasa attainment of the highest God. The categories obviously include Atman. Because it's a dualist philosophy, Atman is there as a category, but there is distinction between Paramatman and Jivatman. Gautama too regards total cessation of misery as apavargo. Ignorance is to be removed by the knowledge, but assistance is rendered by samadhi. The practice of samadhi facilitates the knowledge of truth. Tadartham yamaniyamabhyam atma sanskaro yoga chatma vidhupayo. For that purpose, there should be a purifying of our soul by abstinence from evil and observance of certain duties, as well as by following the spiritual injunction gleaned from the yoga system. Of the 6 orthodox system, however, the 2 Mimamsas are directly related to the Vedas and give the principles of interpretation. In all probability, they once formed a single system of Mimamsa for Vedic interpretation. It has been observed, Jaiminiye cha boyase viruddhangsho nakaschana shrutya vedartha vignane shrutiparang gato hito. Of these 2, Mimamsa deals with dharma, the ritual part, and Vedanta with jnana, or the spiritual knowledge. The most popular among these philosophies is Vedanta. Vedanta split into different schools in the Middle Age. It is subdivided into following categories: Advaita by Adi Shankaracharya, Vishishtadvaita by Ramanujacharya, Dvaita by Madhvacharya, and Achinta Bheda Bheda by Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Advaita emphasizes oneness, and that is why it is referred to as a monism or non-dualistic system. Advaita is best known of all Vedanta schools. Unity of Brahman is sought in the Vedantic systems. The meaning of unity varying between identity and similarity. According to Advaita, Brahman is the only tattva or reality. It is pure consciousness, devoid of all attributes, the nature of existence, consciousness, bliss, satyam jnanam anantam brahma sat and sat chit anand. The embodied self or jiva is really nothing different from Brahman. The direct realization of the identity of the individual self with the Supreme Self is liberation. The Advaita Vedanta comes closest to the Upanishadic view of spirituality as discussed above. According to Ramanuja, there are 3 tattvas: God, souls, and matter. God, or absolute, is qualified diversity. God is immanent, yet transcendent. Individual souls and matter are dependent on Him, asvatantra, and become His attributes. He holds them together in unity. Creation is real. Maya is the real power of God by which He creates the universe. He is both the efficient cause and the material cause of creation. Combination of action and knowledge is regarded as the way to liberation. Even in liberation, the distinction between God and individual soul persists. Devotion involving self-surrender is the best way to liberation. Reality, according to Madhva or Ananda Tirtha, is qualified dualism. He admits 5-fold differences as real: God and souls, God and matter, soul and souls, soul and matter, and matter and matter. God, souls, and matter are all eternal and real. Souls and matter are dependent on God. God is immanent and transcendent, perfect person, pleased by devotion, which is the only way to liberation. There are different grades of liberation: Salokya, Samipya, Sarupya, and Sajujju. God is the efficient cause of creation. Some scholars and sages have shown that these different schools represent actually different stages of realization of the ultimate reality. Madhusudana Saraswati observes with reference to Advaita Vedanta, idameva sarva shastranam murdhanyam shastrantaram sarvam asyaiva shesha bhutamiti idameva mumukshu bhiradaranyam. Within spiritual metaphysics and insistence on spiritual monism, there is only one spiritual being ultimately exists, is probably the most important consideration that Indian thought upholds. Thus, Indian philosophy represented the spiritual goal. But how to reach the goal? This was answered by various religious practices which suited people of different capability. Thus, philosophy provided a correct view of reality, while religion showed the correct way of life. Philosophy provided the vision, while religion brought about the fulfillment. Philosophy was the theory, and religion was the practice. Thus, in ancient India, philosophy and religion complemented each other. Culture usually means the art and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. Some aspects of human behavior, social practices, expressive forms such as art, music, dance, technologies, taken together are said to be cultural universals found in all human societies. The concept of material culture covers the physical expression of culture such as technology, architecture and art. Whereas the immaterial aspects of culture such as principles of social institutions and mythology, philosophy, literature and science comprise the intangible cultural heritage of a society. In the humanities, one sense of culture as an attribute of the individuals has been the degree to which they have cultivated a particular level of sophistication in the arts, sciences, education or manners. Swami Vivekananda has pointed out that every civilization or culture has a particular life center, a dominant characteristic or trend. According to him, the life center of Indian culture is spirituality. By spirituality is meant a way of life oriented to the ultimate purpose or goal of life, which is the realization of the Supreme Spirit or God. Swamiji says, I quote, art, science and religion are but three ways of expressing a single truth. But in order to understand this, we must have the theory of Advaita, unquote. Everything that lifts the human mind above animal instincts and drives may be regarded as spiritual. The artistic sense, the creative impulse, sublimates the animal instinct of man. In ancient Indian tradition, different branches of knowledge always tried to establish relation with the Vedas for authority and sanctity. For example, Vedangas and Upavedas, etc. Very similarly, different branches of literature, fine arts, etc. were conceived as related to spirituality, directly or indirectly, closely or distantly. Bhartrihari, the main exponent of the philosophy of grammar, claims that grammar is the royal road to liberation for the aspirants. Idamaddang padasthanam siddhi sopana parvanam yam sa moksha marganam ajimha rajapaddhati. The system of Indian ethics, liberalized by the Catholicity of the ancient mind, did not ban or violently discourage the aesthetic or even the hedonistic being of man, in spite of a growing ascetic tendency and a certain high austerity of the summits. The aesthetic satisfactions of all kinds and all grades were an important part of the culture. Poetry, the drama, song, dance, music, the greater and lesser arts were placed under the sanction of the rishis and were made instruments of the spirit's culture. A just theory held them to be initially the means of a pure aesthetic satisfaction, and each was founded on its own basic rule and law. But on that basis, and with a perfect fidelity to it, still raised up to minister to the intellectual, ethical, and religious development of being. Traditional Advaitins emphasize the transcendental aspect of Brahman. In such a situation, art and science have no meaning, but Brahman is also immanent. In Indian culture, the ultimate reality is regarded as personal as well as impersonal. impersonal. The first influenced Indian art in different ways. Gods are all manifestations of one primal being. Various symbols of Brahman are made use of in meditation, also in arts. Hinduism with its gods and goddesses provided boundless scope for artistic expressions in art, temple architecture, sculpture, and music and literature. Bhakti particularly encouraged worship of the Supreme Being in different forms in idols as a way to liberation. Sri Ramakrishna said, if a person excels in music, painting, or dancing, he can realize God. That is to say, arts can be means of self-realization or God-realization. Material culture too may be used for spiritual purpose. Devava Brahman Rupe Murtang Chaiva Murtang Chu. Through form one strives to ascend to the formless, through sound to the soundless. Every work of art is at one end at the same time Namavat and Rupavat. Brahmana says, Atma Samskritir Bhava Shilpani. Shilpas are perfection of self. There are three schools of philosophy of Indian art: Rasa Brahmavada in literature, Nada Brahmavada in music, and Vastu Brahmavada in architecture. Art transcends worldly truth, Rasa does also so. Atman is used in aesthetics to denote the essence. For example, Ritiratma Kavyasya, Nartaka Atma, Ranga Antalatma, Kavyasya Atma, Dhaniriti Budhairjaswamam Nata Purvo, etc. Aesthetic enjoyment arising from literature has been called Brahma Swada Sahodar. Rasa is not like ordinary emotions, it's alaukiko, demanding sadharanikriti or universalization. It is Brahma Swada Sahodar, similar but not identical, for it is temporary. Sat, Chit and Ananda may in different levels correspond to goodness in social life, truth in philosophy and science, and beauty in art. In Indian thought and culture, all forms of art are considered to be manifestations of the Ananda aspect of Brahman. Brahman has served as a basic concept in music, where Shabda Brahman has re-emerged as Nada Brahman. Chaitanyam Sarva Bhutanam Vivritam Jagatatmana Nada Brahma Tadanandam Advitiyam Upasmahe. Similarly, the concept of Brahman as Purusha finds expression in the arts, particularly in architecture. This aspect was studied mainly by scholars like Stella Cramdish and Alice Bonner. E.B. Havel was greatly influenced by spirituality of Indian art and architecture. In our time, Bettina Boehmer observes, Brahman, in spite of being transcended, all pervasive and beyond the grasp of sense, the mental faculties has provided all fields of art in one way or another. It's not only the source and center of all manifestations, but also the goal to which any kind of artistic expression wants to lead. Thus, the goal of art is ultimately the fullness of blissful experience, which is only comparable to this testing of the absolute Brahma Swada Sahodar. Vivekananda said, Sammukhete bhishon kapat bhruvange chahiya bole ar nahi hao agrasar. The clock up there in front of me gives me the same message that my play is done. Therefore, I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your kind and patient hearing.
Yes, our grateful thanks to Professor Chakraborty. And as we are lagging behind time, we have to omit the question discussion hour. But discourses begin and they continue. And this is a place where that actually takes place, isn't it so? So it is an unending discourse and it will continue. Thank you.